They drowned Selka Nareth's name before the entire royal pack, so no law in the Crown of Ash would have to remember she had ever lived. No one asked why the basin needed water to forget what ink had already written. The Moon Basin stood in the center of the record hall, a wide bowl of black stone filled with silver water under an open roof. It did not destroy names. It moved them below standing. Moonlight fell straight into it, clean and white, but the water did not shine. It waited dark as a throat. Around it stood the nobles of Frosthall, the royal scent judges, the pack witnesses, and every servant ordered to watch what happened when a name was removed from law. Selka knelt on the wet stone with both wrists bound in white cord. Not chains. Chains belonged to prisoners. White cord belonged to people the court wanted to pretend had agreed. Her gray servant dress clung to her knees where basin water had spilled. Her long dark hair had been pulled back from her face so every witness could see her mouth when she was told she no longer had the right to speak her own name. The record strip lay on the silver tray beside the basin, thin as skin marked with the black ink of her birth entry. Selka Nareth, daughter of Mira Nareth. Servant line attached to the royal record halls. Legally present. Not for long. High Namekeeper Katrin Velm stood behind the basin in pale moon robes embroidered with tiny black letters. She was beautiful, the way a locked door could be. Beautiful, polished, cold, and made to keep others out. Selka Nareth Katrin said, "You are accused of carrying forbidden name water from the drowned records." Selka lifted her head. "I carried basin water from the floor after your acolyte spilled it." A few servants lowered their eyes. They had seen it. None of them would say so. Katrin smiled gently, which made the lie worse. A servant does not decide what the basin has lost. Selka looked at the black water. It had been whispering all morning, not words anyone else heard. More like the shape left behind after a name was forced under. Selka had heard those shapes since childhood while scrubbing the record hall steps. Names caught in drains. Names stuck under moonstone tiles. Drowned names did not die. They waited where law could pretend not to hear them. She had never answered them. Servants survived by not answering what power tried to bury. Then the royal doors opened. The hall changed without being commanded. Every wolf in the chamber lowered its head before Alpha King Evander Frosthall entered. He wore black armor clasped with a mantle of winter wolf fur, his dark hair tied back from a hard, beautiful face, his silver-gray eyes empty of anything the court could use against him. He moved like a man whose body remembered a wolf no one else was allowed to mention, and memory without a shadow was a wound wearing a crown. Selka had seen him only twice before. Both times she had felt the same absence around him. Not weakness. A missing shadow. High Namekeeper Katrin bowed. "Majesty, the basin awaits your final command." Evander's gaze moved to Selka. It did not soften. Kings did not soften in public unless softness had already been made safe for them. "What did she remove?" he asked. The question was wrong, Selka thought. Water did not vanish when spilled. It carried what it had touched. Katrin's fingers rested on the tray beside Selka's name strip. A measure of forbidden name water. Enough to contaminate witness law. Her name must be washed before it teaches other servants to claim standing. Standing. Selka almost laughed. She had spent her life kneeling. Evander looked at her bound wrists. "Did you carry it?" Selka met his eyes, because lowering hers would make the lie look taller. "I carried water from the floor." "From the basin." "From the floor," she repeated. "After it was spilled." Katrin's voice stayed calm. "She admits contact." The court accepted that faster than truth. Evander's jaw tightened once. Perhaps he heard the difference. Perhaps he only disliked that a servant had made him listen twice. His gaze dropped to the basin, and for one breath, the black water shivered. Selka saw it. So did he. Something moved beneath the surface. Not a reflection. Not moonlight. A dark shape turned once, as if a large body had shifted under a lake too small to hold it. Evander's hand closed at his side. Katrin spoke quickly. "The rite must be completed before contamination spreads." A scent judge stepped forward and lifted the record strip with silver tongs. Once the final drop falls, Selka Nareth is removed from pack record. She may hold no witness right, no shelter right, no burial name, no labor claim, no protection under moon law. Each phrase cut a piece from the room around her. No witness right meant no one had to hear her. No shelter right meant any door could close. No burial name meant even death would not return what law erased. Katrin dipped the strip into the basin. The ink began to bleed. Selka felt something inside her chest pull tight as if a hook had caught behind her ribs. The water took the first letters. Selka, then Nareth. The court watched her become less than present. Katrin raised a silver cup and filled it from the basin. Majesty, command the final drop. Evander did not take the cup at once. The water trembled harder. Selka heard it then, not the drowned names. A growl under them, low, familiar to a man she did not know. Evander's face went still. Katrin saw it and stepped closer. Majesty. The court waited. Selka's mouth felt cold, but she forced one last thing into the world before the basin could swallow it. My name is Selka Nareth. The silver cup shook in Katrin's hand. A ripple crossed the basin. Evander looked at Selka, and this time his eyes sharpened, not with mercy, but with suspicion, and something more dangerous beneath it. Fear. Final drop, Katrin whispered. Evander took the cup. For one suspended breath, the whole hall belonged to the space between his hand and the black water. Then the Alpha King turned his wrist. The final drop fell. The basin water turned black. Not dark. Black. Moonlight vanished inside it. The surface rose upward in a column shaped like a throat, swallowing the air above the bowl. Nobles stumbled back. The scent judges dropped their silver tools. Katrin's face lost all its careful calm. Selka could not move. The black water bent toward her. Not toward her blood. Toward the name the basin had failed to drown. Something climbed out. First, two massive paws struck the rim of the basin slick with moon water. Then a huge black wolf dragged itself from the depths, drenched, scarred, and breathing, as if it had been held under for years. Water streamed from its fur in silver-black lines. Its eyes opened, one pale as moonbone, one dark as drowned law. Evander staggered back. No, he said. The wolf ignored the court. It ignored Katrin. It ignored the Alpha King, who looked as if his own soul had risen from the basin without permission. The massive wet wolf crossed the flooded stone and lowered its muzzle into Selka's bound hands. It did not claim her. It recognized the standing her name had opened. The Moon Basin had not erased her name. It had used her drowned standing to return what had been submerged before her. It had returned the king's lost wolf to the woman whose name the court had tried to drown. Name water retained. Servant standing contested. Royal wolf record surfaced. The Moon Basin returned the wolf, but it did not return Selka's name. A returned wolf could be denied. A returned name would have to be answered. The massive black wolf kept its wet muzzle in Selka's bound hands, breathing cold moon water against her skin while the court stood frozen around the flooded record hall. Silver-black streams ran from its fur and spread across the stone, touching the hem of Selka's gray dress, circling her knees, then slipping back toward the basin as if the water still owned everything it had carried out. Selka could feel the wolf trembling, not with weakness, with restraint. It did not lunge at Katrin. It did not bare its teeth at the scent judges. It did not leap toward Evander Frosthall, though the Alpha King looked at it as if a missing piece of his body had climbed from the dark. The wolf only stayed with Selka's hands, not claiming her, recognizing the standing her drowned name had opened. Standing was not mercy. It was only the right to be heard before being buried again. High Namekeeper Katrin Velm recovered before anyone else knew what to fear. Do not touch it, she commanded. The basin has formed a mimic from illegal name, water. The word struck the hall hard enough for several nobles to breathe again. Mimic was safer than wolf. Safer things could be killed without changing the record. Evander did not move. His eyes stayed fixed on the drenched black wolf. His face had gone rigid, but Selka saw the damage under it. Recognition was fighting law in him, and law had trained him longer. Katrin stepped toward him. Majesty, do not answer it. The wolf's ears flattened. Evander whispered one word. Ruan. The name moved through the water. The basin shuddered. Katrin's eyes flashed. That name has no standing in this hall. Then she feared the name, not the beast. Selka looked down at the wolf. Ruan. The name did not feel spoken for the first time. It felt surfaced. A thing dragged up from under. Years of official silence, still soaked, still breathing, still waiting to be believed. Selka's own name remained gone from the record strip. She could feel the absence where it had been, not in her heart, in the law around her. The room no longer held space for her voice. Her wrists were bound. Her witness right had been washed. Her protection under moon law had been cut away with the final drop Evander had poured. The wolf had returned, but Selka Nareth was still legally drowned. And a drowned woman could be used as a doorway without being treated as present. She lifted her bound hand slightly, not away from Ruan, but enough to let basin water run from her fingers back into the flooding circle. "Read what drowned before me." The Moon Basin darkened. Katrin turned sharply. A drowned name has no standing to compel basin record. The water paused. Selka felt the words hit the black surface, sink, and settle. Standing. Compel. Record. The basin kept them. Then the water around Ruan's paws began to move. It pulled thin black threads from the puddles at Selka's knees, from the spilled cup from the tray where her washed record strip lay blank and limp. All of it gathered between her bound wrists and the wolf's lowered muzzle. A line of black water rose into the air. Royal wolf name submerged. Crown shadow severed. Namekeeper seal entered. Alpha judgment narrowed. The basin had named the wound in Evander's rule. It had not yet named the knife. Evander stepped back as if the words had struck him in the chest. Crown shadow severed. Selka understood enough to go cold. Ruan was not merely Evander's wolf. He was the king's shadow-in-law, the part of the Alpha's rule that should have answered instinct truth and pact bond beneath written decree. If that name had been submerged, then Evander had been ruling with something in him severed and called discipline. Katrin's voice cut through the hall. Partial record, improperly opened. Evander turned toward her. Namekeeper seal entered. A protective measure, Katrin said. Against my wolf. Against instability. Ruan's wet muzzle pressed more heavily into Selka's hands. She nearly fell forward from the weight, but she held herself still. The wolf was not asking her for comfort. It was using the place where her name still contested drowning to anchor the record. Evander looked from Ruan to the basin, then to the silver cup still lying near Katrin's feet. His voice lowered. I poured the final drop after I saw the basin move. The admission did not return Selka's name. She felt that too. The basin heard him. Final drop entered. Alpha command entered. Servant name drowned after basin movement witnessed. Selka looked up at him then, not with gratitude. He had seen the water move. He had felt something wrong. He had still completed the rite. Whatever Katrin had hidden, Evander had placed the last drop himself. His jaw tightened under her gaze. He did not ask forgiveness. That was the first wise thing he had done. Katrin moved to the basin's edge and took a small black vial from within her sleeve. The mimic must be sunk before it spreads false standing. False standing was a phrase built to comfort people who had stolen the real kind. Katrin uncorked the vial. Black salt spilled into her palm. The basin water recoiled. Ruan lifted his head from Selka's hands for the first time, but he still did not attack. His lips pulled back only enough to show moon-pale teeth. A warning, not judgment. Evander stepped forward. Katrin. She did not look at him. Majesty, if the record sinks now, the rite can be corrected. The servant remains drowned. The Basin mimic dissolves. The court proceeds under clean law. Clean law. The water around Selka's wrists tightened like cold thread. Under the basin beneath the growl and the flood, and Katrin's black salt, Selka heard a name moving below Ruan's. Not Selka, not Ruan. An older name. A name drowned before the king ever knew what had been taken. She pressed her bound hands back into the water. Read deeper. Katrin threw the black salt. Evander caught her wrist before the grains touched the basin. The hall went silent. The basin water rose between them in a thin black line and wrote one more truth across the air. Evander's wolf had not been lost in battle. Its name had been drowned in the Moon Basin before the court ever told him it was gone. But Ruan was not the first name under the water. Evander held Katrin's wrist, but Selka's name was still underwater. A king could stop a hand. He could not stop a drowning he had already commanded. The Alpha King had kept the black salt from falling, but he had not restored the servant kneeling on the flooded stone. Selka Nareth remained bound in white cord, her record strip blank beside the Moon Basin, her witness right washed below, standing by the final drop Evander had poured. Ruan stayed beside her, huge and soaked, his black fur dripping silver-dark water into the spreading pool. He did not attack Katrin. He did not drag Selka away. He did not bare his teeth at the court as if violence could repair law. His wet muzzle lowered again toward her bound hands, steadying the black water between her wrists. Not chosen. Anchored. Anchor was not honor. It was weight. Katrin's fingers were still trapped in Evander's grip, black salt glittering in her palm. Her voice did not shake. Stopping the salt does not restore drowned standing majesty. The servant remains removed from pack record. Selka felt the truth of it. No one had said her name back into law. No witness right returned to her tongue. No shelter right opened around her body. If a guard struck her, now law would have to be persuaded she had been present enough to bruise. That was what removal meant. Harm could find her faster than protection could. Katrin looked down at the basin. A submerged royal wolf name cannot testify through a drowned servant record. The water stirred. It kept the words, submerged, testify, drowned servant record. Selka listened beneath them. There was another name below Ruan's. She had heard it before the black salt fell older and thinner, like a voice dragged through deep water so long it had forgotten air. Ruan's return had opened the surface. Her drowned standing had given the basin a legal crack. But something beneath the wolf still waited. The basin had named the wound in Evander's rule. It had not yet named the knife. And a wound without a knife could still be called accident. Selka pressed her bound hands lower into the water. Ruan's muzzle stayed against her knuckles, heavy and cold. The wolf did not give her power. He gave the record weight. Read the name beneath Ruan. Katrin's eyes hardened. There was no name beneath him, only basin residue from unlawful contact. Residue. The word made Selka's stomach turn. Residue was what remained when law wanted a person to sound like dirt. The Moon Basin darkened again. A thin stream of black water slid from the blank record strip where Selka's name had been washed away. It crawled across the silver tray down its edge and into the flood around her knees. The water did not rise toward her blood. It rose toward the place her name had failed to disappear completely. Then the basin read. Older name submerged. First witness drowned. Royal wolf record attached. Namekeeper order concealed. The basin had named Arel Voss as witness, not rebel, not traitor, not residue. Evander's hand tightened around Katrin's wrist. First witness. Katrin did not look at him. Fragmented basin echo. The basin answered by pulling more black water from the blank strip. Echo entered. Fragmented entered. Concealed entered. Ruan's body shuddered once. Selka felt the tremor through her bound hands. The wolf still did not attack. That restraint frightened the room more than teeth would have. A beast could be killed. A witness had to be discredited. Evander released Katrin's wrist, only to step between her and the basin. The black salt remained in her palm. Whose name, he asked. The basin did not answer him. It pulsed around Selka's hands. The court saw it and began to murmur. Katrin spoke quickly. You see the corruption. The water answers the drowned servant because her removal is incomplete. This is precisely why the rite must be sealed. Selka lifted her face. Incomplete means not finished. Incomplete means unlawful. Katrin snapped. The basin kept both. Incomplete entered. Unlawful entered. Evander looked at Selka then, not softly, not cleanly. He had no right to softness yet. He had poured the final drop. He had narrowed her into absence after seeing the basin move. If my judgment was narrowed before they told me my wolf was lost, he said, then every sentence after that carried a basin silence. The admission did not widen Selka's standing. She felt that too. The Moon Basin pulsed. Alpha judgment acknowledged. Final drop acknowledged. Basin silence carried. Selka looked at him without gratitude. Good words did not undrown a name, but bad silence had finally cracked. Catrin's face sharpened. Majesty, do not let a servant's drowned standing rewrite royal memory. The wolf's record was attached to protect your reign from unstable witness to what Evander asked. Catrin's mouth closed. The basin liked that even more than careless wording. Black water rose in a thread between Selka's wrists and Ruan's muzzle. Inside it, a name began to form, wavering like ink underwater. Arel Voss. The name struck the basin like a stone dropped into a grave. Older name surfaced. Errol Voss. First witness drowned. Royal wolf record. Attached to conceal witness below standing. Evander stared at the name. Who was Errol Voss? No one answered. But several older nobles looked away. Catrin saw them. Selka saw Catrin see them. The Moon Basin rose higher, black and shining beneath the open roof, and the next line formed slowly across the water. Ruan had been drowned to hide an older name beneath him, the first witness who saw the crown of ash begin erasing living people from law. But a witness was not enough. The basin still had to read what he witnessed. Errol Voss's name did not sink after the basin wrote it. It trembled above the black water in thin silver letters, bending with every ripple but refusing to break. The Moon Basin held the name between Selka's bound hands and Ruan's lowered muzzle, as if the record needed both the drowned servant's contested standing and the royal wolf's submerged name to keep the witness from disappearing again. Selka remained on her knees, still bound, still legally drowned. No witness right had returned to her voice. No shelter right had risen around her body. If the court decided to drag her away, the law would still have to decide whether a woman without standing could be wronged by hands that touched her. Ruan stayed close, wet fur dripping steadily into the basin water. His muzzle rested against Selka's knuckles, heavy and cold. He did not claim her. He did not guard her like a mate. He anchored the record because her drowned name had opened a place where submerged things could be heard. Catrin Velm looked at Errol Voss's name as if it were dirt floating on sacred water. Surface residue, she said. A drowned trace repeating itself through illegal contact. The basin accepted it. Residue entered. Illegal contact entered. Trace entered. Selka felt the water tighten around her wrists. The words did not erase Arel. They only gave the basin more lies to measure. Evander Frosthall stood between Catrin and the bowl, his face cut with moonlight and anger he had not earned cleanly. He had stopped the black salt. He had not yet answered why the basin had been allowed to hold his wolf for years while his throne spoke through narrowed judgment. He looked at the floating name. Errol Voss. No answer came to him. The basin did not move toward his voice. Selka understood before the court did. The record was not refusing the Alpha King because he lacked power. It was refusing him because this layer had opened through a drowned name, and Selka's name was the one still hanging between erasure and proof. She lifted her bound hands slightly. Ruan lowered his muzzle with them, then read what Arel Voss saw. Catrin's expression hardened. A surfaced witness below standing cannot testify against crown record. The water went still. Below standing, testify. Crown record. Selka's chest tightened. The words were meant to bury Arel a second time. They were also meant for her. Below standing meant useful as a doorway, invalid as a person. It meant the basin could draw record through her absence, while the court still denied she had a voice. The Moon Basin read anyway. Living name entered, death not recorded. Moon Basin applied. Witness objected. Namekeeper order sealed. The hall did not move. For one breath, even Ruan seemed to stop breathing. Living name entered. Death not recorded. Selka stared at the sequence until the letters blurred against the black water. Arel Voss had not been witnessing a funeral record. He had not objected to burial rights, disputed inheritance, or challenged a corpse's name. He had objected because someone living had been placed into the basin's law as if death had already made them safe to erase. Evander's voice dropped. The crown erased people before death. Catrin answered immediately. No. The basin applied lawful removal to a name whose standing had already become dangerous. Dangerous, Selka repeated. The word tasted like water left too long in stone. The basin accepted it. Dangerous entered. Evander looked at Katrin. If Arel saw the first living erasure, then my throne was narrowed before my reign was even allowed to know its own shadow. The admission turned the room colder. It did not widen Selka's standing. She felt that too, but it pulled the king closer to the record he had helped enforce. If his judgment had been narrowed before his reign understood itself, then every sentence he had given afterwards still wore his authority, even if the basin had taught him to see less. Katrin stepped around him, careful not to touch the water. Majesty, a below-standing witness cannot rewrite crown record. Errol Voss was submerged because his objection threatened order. Objection is not truth. The basin pulsed. Objection entered. Truth entered. Order entered. The black water pulled again from Selka's blank record strip. A thin stream crawled off the silver tray, crossed the flooded floor, and joined the line beneath Arel's name. This time the water did not form a full record sequence. It tried to form another name. A woman's name. The first letter appeared. M. Then the water shuddered and folded over it. Selka felt the resistance like fingers around her throat. The basin wanted to read. Something in the record wanted the name kept beneath the surface. She pressed her bound hands lower. Ruan's muzzle pushed down with her, not commanding, not protecting, only waiting the opening before it could close. "Read the living name," Selka whispered. Katrin snapped. She has no standing to request it. The basin answered by circling Selka's wrists in black water. Drowned, standing, contested. Request retained. Name formation pending. Evander turned toward the basin. "Read it." Nothing happened. The silence struck him cleanly. Selka looked up at him through wet hair and moonlight. "It does not answer you here." His jaw tightened, not with insult, with recognition. This part of the record had been opened through the thing he had allowed to be drowned. Power could command the court. It could not replace the standing his own final drop had cut away. Selka swallowed the cold in her throat and forced her voice to hold. "Read what Errol Voss saw." The basin darkened until moonlight vanished inside it. Then one line rose beneath the unfinished woman's name. Errol Voss had not witnessed a death. He had witnessed the first living woman erased from law while she was still breathing. The basin did not finish the woman's name at first. It held the single letter above the water like a hook. M. The black surface trembled beneath it as if the Moon Basin had found something too old to rise cleanly and too heavy to sink again. Selka Nareth stayed on her knees, wrists bound her erased record strip lying blank on the silver tray. Ruan remained beside her, soaked and silent, his wet muzzle pressed against her hands to keep the record from folding shut. Selka was still legally drowned. That truth stayed colder than the water. A court could listen through her and still deny she had spoken. It could use the gap her name had opened while insisting she had no place inside the law. That was how drowned standing worked. It made a doorway out of a person and then argued the doorway was not a person at all. Katrin Velm stepped closer to the basin. A partial letter is not a name. The basin pulsed. Partial entered. Name entered. Selka looked at the floating letter, then let it finish. Katrin's mouth tightened. A pending mark beneath standing cannot compel a complete record. Evander Frosthall turned toward her. "You keep naming standing after the basin answers." "Because standing is the wall between order and panic," Katrin said. "Without it, any drowned trace can drag the court into old accusations." Ruan's breath warmed Selka's bound fingers, though the water dripping from his fur was cold. He still did not move against Katrin. His restraint had become part of the record now. The wolf was not here to punish. He was here because his name had been tied around another name like a stone. Selka pressed her hands lower into the water. "Read the woman's name." The basin blackened until even the moon above seemed to lose its reflection. The letter trembled, then the rest rose. Mira Voss. Errol Voss's name shuddered beside it. Selka's breath caught. Not because she knew the woman, because the two names sat too close together to be strangers. Katrin spoke quickly. "A family link does not prove lawful harm." Voss was an unstable record line. The basin accepted it. Family link entered. Unstable entered. Record line entered. Then the water read beneath Mira's name. Living name entered. Death not recorded. Removal authorized. Witness objected. Namekeeper order sealed. Evander's face had gone hard and pale. Aurel objected because Mira was alive. Katrin did not deny it. That was worse. She only lifted her chin. Alive is not the same as lawful. A person may be present in flesh and absent in standing. If a name threatens pack stability, pre-death removal may be required. Selka stared at her. Pre-death removal. The phrase slid through the hall like a blade dipped in water. The basin pulsed beneath her hands. Pre-death removal entered. Ruan's body went rigid. For the first time, a low sound rolled in his chest. Not an attack. Not yet. A warning held so tightly it hurt to hear. Evander looked at the wolf, then at the basin. You drowned a living woman's name before she died. Katrin's voice stayed controlled. The court removed standing from a dangerous name. What danger? The basin did not answer him. It waited under Selka's hands. Evander understood and looked down at her. Selka hated how quickly he learned when the truth wounded him. She hated more that the basin had made her necessary without making her protected. She lifted her bound wrists as much as the cord allowed. Read the danger assigned to Mira Voss. The water rose in a thin black ribbon between her hands and Ruan's muzzle. Danger assigned. Witness wife to Aurel Voss. Record hall clerk. Unauthorized name retention. Refused drowning order. The court shifted. Record hall clerk. That was not a rebel title. Not a royal threat. Not a rival Luna claim. Mira Voss had worked among records. She had kept names. She had refused an order to drown one. Selka looked at Katrin. She refused to erase someone. Katrin answered. She refused lawful instruction. The basin pulsed. Lawful instruction entered. Refused entered. Evander's voice lowered. Whose name was she ordered to drown? Katrin moved before the basin could respond. Not toward the water this time. Toward Selka. Ruan's head lifted. Every wolf in the hall stiffened. Katrin stopped one pace from Selka's bound hands and smiled down at her with the same cold gentleness from the beginning of the rite. Be careful, servant. You have no standing. If the basin pulls too much through you, there may be nothing left to restore. Selka's mouth went dry. The threat was not loud enough for the whole court to call it one. But the basin heard it. Nothing left to restore entered. Evander stepped forward. Move away from her. Katrin did not look at him. You cannot protect what the law has already removed. The words struck Selka harder than fear, because they were true until answered. She looked at the blank strip where her own name had been. She looked at Mira Voss above the water, a woman erased while breathing because she refused to drown another name. A witness drowned because he objected. A royal wolf submerged because it carried the record between them. Selka understood the shape now. Mira had refused the first living erasure. Errol had witnessed it. Ruan had been drowned to bury both. And Selka's own erased name had reopened the path because drowned names recognized the pattern of being forced below law. She pressed her bound hands into the basin until the water closed over her wrists. Read the name Mira refused to drown. The basin surged. Katrin's calm broke for one sharp breath. Evander saw it. So did Selka. Black water climbed from the bowl, carrying one final line before the name could form. Mira Voss was erased because she refused to drown the name that began the Crown of Ash's secret law. The name did not rise after Mira Voss's refusal was read. Only the water did. It climbed in a thin black column above the Moon Basin, trembling under the open roof while moonlight vanished inside it. Selka Nareth knelt before the bowl with her wrists bound and her name still drowned below standing. Ruan remained beside her, his soaked muzzle pressed into her hands, anchoring the record with a restraint that made every wolf in the chamber uneasy. He did not choose her. He held the opening because the basin had made her absence useful. That was not romance. It was not rescue. It was a wound turned into a door. Katrin Velm recovered the way lawkeepers recovered by naming the danger before anyone could understand it. Origin names are sealed for royal stability, she said. A servant removal cannot compel the first law beneath the basin. The water accepted her words. Origin names entered. Royal stability entered. First law entered. Selka felt the basin tighten around her bound hands. The cord dug into her wrists. The black water did not burn, but it pulled at the space where her legal name should have been, as if her absence had become a hook sunk deep into the record. Evander Frosthall stood between Katrin and the basin, but he could not command this reading cleanly. The basin had refused him before. His final drop had drowned Selka. His narrow judgment had sentenced others. His authority could stand above the water, but this layer answered the one below standing. Selka looked at the place where Mira Voss's name still shimmered. Read the name Mira refused to drown. Katrin's face hardened. A clerk's refusal does not create testimony. Mira Voss was removed because she interfered with Crown record. Then let the record say that Selka said. The Moon Basin stilled. For one breath, the whole hall seemed to lean over the black water. Then the basin read. Living name entered. Standing challenged. Death not recorded. Drowning order refused. Witness line preserved. The name tried to form. N. The water shook. Katrin lifted one hand, and the scent judges moved closer around the basin. They did not touch Selka. They did not touch Ruan. They only tightened the witness circle shoulder to shoulder, turning bodies into a wall. Selka felt the pressure immediately. The letter blurred. Ruan's muzzle pressed heavier into her hands. Not claiming. Waiting. Selka drew one breath through clenched teeth and spoke before the water could fold. Finish it. The basin answered her drowned standing. Nareth Vale. The name struck the hall like a bell under water. Several older nobles looked at Katrin, not surprised, afraid. Evander saw that fear and turned toward them. Who was Nareth Vale? Katrin answered first. A destabilizing claimant. The basin pulsed. Destabilizing entered. Claimant entered. Selka felt the water reject both words before it wrote again. Nareth Vale. Living petitioner. Name water witness. Crown erasure challenged. Secret law initiated. The words moved through Selka like cold lightning. Name water witness. Not a queen. Not a Luna. Not royal blood rising from hidden banners. A witness. Someone who could hear names forced below standing and call them back into record. Someone who made erasure dangerous because drowned people could no longer be made silent. Katrin's voice sharpened. Forbidden witness arts. That is why the law began. Name water witnesses made every execution, exile, adoption, transfer, and traitor ruling vulnerable to endless challenge. Selka looked up at her. They made names harder to drown. They made rule impossible. The basin kept both. Names harder to drown entered. Rule impossible entered. Evander's gaze moved to Selka's face. Not soft. Not yet. He looked as if the court had just placed another blade in his hand and asked him to decide whether it had already been used. If Nareth Vale began the secret law, he said, why was Mira ordered to drown her? Katrin's mouth closed. The basin liked silence. The black water rose higher. Nareth petition entered. Erased names recovered. Pack removals contested. Crown record threatened. Moon Basin repurposed. Evander went still. Repurposed. Selka understood the word before the court did. The Moon Basin had not always been built to drown names below standing. It had been made to hold names safely, perhaps even to restore them. Then the crown had turned it into a throat. Katrin stepped forward. All instruments of law evolve. The basin accepted it. Instruments entered. Evolve entered. Selka's voice came colder than the water. Read what it was before. The scent judges shifted. Katrin snapped. No drowned servant may question basin origin. Evander turned to her. She is not the only one asking. The basin did not answer him. Selka did. But I am the one it can hear. The words cost her, not because they were proud, because they were true in the cruelest way. The basin could hear her because Evander had helped drown her. Her legal absence had become the passage through which old removals could surface. Evander's face tightened. Good. Let him feel the shape of that. The basin read. Moon Basin. Original function, name recovery. Standing restoration. False death correction. Witness protection. Then beneath those lines, darker water formed a second sequence. Crown revision entered. Drowned, standing, created. Living erasure authorized. Name water witnesses suppressed. Selka stared at the final line. Name water witnesses suppressed. The water around her wrists tightened. Not a shackle now. A recognition too heavy to be mercy. Katrin saw it and spoke quickly. Suppression protected the kingdom from unlawful witness lines. Ruan's body shuddered. Evander looked at him. Ruan refused it. The basin pulsed. Royal wolf objection entered. Ruan attached to suppressed witness record. Wolf name submerged. Alpha judgment narrowed. Now the layers sat together. Nareth Vale had challenged erasure. Mira Voss refused to drown her name. Errol Voss witnessed that refusal. Ruan carried the objection. Evander had been severed from the wolf before he could know what the basin had done to his own judgment. Selka remained kneeling at the center of all of it without a legal name of her own. She asked the only question left in that layer. What was Nareth Vale to the basin? Katrin whispered. Do not. The black water rose between Selka and Ruan, shaping letters that did not tremble this time. First name water witness recorded. Origin standing retained. Bloodline, not royal. Function, inherited. The basin's light turned towards Selka's blank record strip. Selka stopped breathing. The secret beneath the Moon Basin was not that she had been chosen. It was that the crown had spent generations drowning the witness line that could prove its erasures were never clean. The basin's light turned towards Selka's blank record strip, but it did not write her name back. That was the mercy the court kept expecting and the cruelty the water refused to give. Selka Nareth remained kneeling on the flooded stone wrists, bound, legally drowned, with Ruan's wet muzzle pressed against her hands. The Moon Basin had named the old witness line. It had read Nareth Vale. It had read Name Water Witness. It had even turned toward Selka's empty strip as if the truth had found the door it needed. But a door was not freedom. Katrin Velm saw that and seized it. There is no active name, she said. A function cannot inherit through a drowned servant. The record strip is blank. Selka Nareth has no standing. The basin kept her words. No active name entered. Drowned servant entered. No standing entered. Selka felt each phrase settle around her like wet cloth. The court heard old power in the title Name Water Witness, but Katrin heard something else procedure. If Selka had no standing, then whatever the basin found through her could be named irregular, unstable, incomplete. Ruan stayed still. He did not bare his teeth. He did not save her from the logic. Evander Frosthall looked at the blank strip, then at Selka's bound wrists. If the function is inherited, why was her name drowned today? Katrin turned to him. Because she carried forbidden basin water. Selka's voice came quiet, from the floor. The basin pulsed. From the floor entered. Evander's jaw tightened. Katrin's expression did not change. Contact is contact. The law cannot survive servant interpretations of sacred water. Selka looked down at the black water around her knees. The spilled basin water had started everything, or that was what the court had been told. But water did not vanish when spilled. It carried what it touched. If the basin had already begun answering her before the rite, then perhaps the spill had not been accident at all. She pressed her bound hands lower. Ruan lowered his muzzle with her. Read why my name was selected. Katrin's eyes flashed. A drowned name cannot question its own removal. The basin darkened. Drowned name entered. Question entered. Removal entered. Then it read, Witness line traced. Nareth record flagged. Name water response detected. Removal petition prepared. Selka went cold. Prepared. Not discovered. Not judged in the moment. Prepared. Evander's face hardened. When Katrin stepped forward, Majesty internal petitions of the record hall are not subject to basin inquiry. The water moved before Selka spoke. Internal petition entered. Record hall entered. Not subject entered. Then a second line rose beneath the first sequence. Before spill, the court shifted. Selka stared at the words until the hall around her seemed to narrow. Before spill, her wrists tightened against the white cord. The spilled water had been proof only because someone needed proof. Her name had been waiting for removal before Katrin's acolyte ever dropped the basin bowl before the court gathered, before Evander lifted the final cup. The law had not found her guilty. It had arranged a reason to make guilt visible. Evander looked at Katrin. Her removal was prepared before the alleged contact. Katrin's voice stayed level. Precaution is not corruption. If a servant line begins responding to drowned records, the Namekeeper office must protect pack stability before panic spreads. Selka lifted her head. You knew what I was? I knew what your line could become. The basin accepted both. Knew entered. Line entered. Could become entered. Selka hated the way fear moved through the court now. Not fear for her, fear of her. Fear of a servant whose name was gone and yet still caused records to rise. That was how power survived. It made the injured look dangerous when they began to describe the wound. Evander spoke slowly. If her line was flagged before the right, then I completed a removal already chosen by your office. Katrin bowed her head. You completed a lawful recommendation. No, he said, eyes still on Selka. I completed a drowning. The basin pulsed hard. Alpha completion acknowledged. Removal prepared. Final drop royal. Selka felt the admission touch the water and stop there. It still did not restore her. Good. Let him see that truth spoken by a king was not the same as repair. Katrin turned toward the sent judges. Seal the servant's hands from the basin. 2 judges moved. Ruan finally lifted his head, not to attack. Only enough for water to stream from his jaws and strike the stone between Selka and the approaching judges. The black water spread into a thin line. A boundary. Not protection by choice. Record preservation. The judges stopped. Katrin's mouth tightened. The wolf interferes. Selka whispered, no. He remembers what interference looks like. The basin stirred beneath her hands. Ruan objection retained. Witness line suppression linked. Nareth removal linked. Royal wolf record attached. Evander read the words and went very still. Ruan was attached to her line, Katrin answered too quickly. To the suppressed witness record, not to her. Selka looked at the wolf. Ruan's pale eye met hers. There was no romance in it, no claim, only an old wet sorrow that had been held under so long it no longer knew how to ask for air. The basin read the final line of that layer. Current witness bearer located. Name Selka Nareth. Status drowned. Function active. The court recoiled. Selka did not. Her name had appeared, but not restored. Status drowned. Function active. She was still below standing, still legally absent. But the thing the crown had tried to erase through her was alive enough to answer. Katrin's voice cut through the fear. Active function without standing is unlawful. Evander turned to her. Then the law drowned its own witness and complained she was underwater. The basin pulsed. Witness underwater entered. Selka's bound hands trembled. Not from power. From the weight of being useful before being recognized. The black water climbed from the basin and rode across the empty air above her blank record strip. Selka Nareth was not drowned because she carried forbidden name water. She was drowned because the basin had begun answering the last name water witness before the court could silence her. Selka Nareth's name appeared in the air, but the basin still called her drowned. That was the shape of Katrin's victory even after every secret had begun to rise. The court saw the line above the blank record strip and did not know whether to fear Selka or pity her. Current witness bearer located. Name Selka Nareth. Status drowned. Function active. The words made her visible and absent at the same time, useful and unprotected, heard by the basin, but still denied by law. Ruan stayed beside her muzzle, lowered against her bound hands. The black wolf's soaked fur dripped steadily into the water, each drop carrying a silence older than the court's fear. He did not attack. He did not choose. He held the record open because Selka's drowned standing was the only door the basin had not yet been able to close. Katrin Velm breathed once, slow and controlled. Then she smiled. Now the court sees the danger, she said. A function can remain active after standing is removed. That is precisely why the Namekeeper office must control it. Selka's stomach tightened. Control. The basin accepted the word. Control entered. Evander Frosthall turned toward Katrin. You drowned her and call the danger hers. I removed unstable standing before it spread, Katrin answered. The function surfaced anyway. That proves the line was more dangerous than we knew. Selka lifted her bound hands slightly. Ruan's muzzle moved with them, heavy and wet. No, she said. It proves you wanted the witness without the woman. The Moon Basin darkened. Witness entered. Woman entered. Without entered. A ripple moved across the court. Katrin's eyes sharpened. Careful servant. Selka almost laughed at the word. Servant still had standing enough when the court wanted obedience. Drowned when it wanted denial. Witness when it wanted use. She pressed her wrists deeper into the water until the white cord darkened around her skin. Read why my function was left active. Katrin struck her silver name rod against the basin rim. A drowned witness has no standing to question administrative preservation. The basin pulsed. Drowned witness entered. Question entered. Administrative preservation entered. Evander's jaw tightened. Let it read. The water did not answer him. It answered Selka's bound hands. Witness line identified. Standing removal prepared. Function preservation required. Royal command required. Alpha final drop supplied. The words struck Selka like cold iron. Royal command required. Alpha final drop supplied. Evander went still. The court did too. Katrin's smile disappeared. Selka looked at the Alpha King, and for the first time the full cruelty of the right opened between them. Katrin had not merely used him as witness. She had needed him as instrument. The Namekeeper office could prepare the drowning. It could frame the charge. It could bind Selka's wrists and arrange the court. But to remove her standing while keeping the function usable, the final drop had needed royal command. Evander had given it. He looked down at the silver cup lying near the basin. His voice came rough. My command kept her function active after her name was drowned. Katrin answered fast. Your command preserved pack stability. My command made her usable. The basin pulsed hard. Usable entered. Selka felt the word move through her like a second drowning. Ruan's body shuddered beside her. Katrin turned on the court before the horror could settle. Without preservation, a name-water witness can fracture every lawful removal in the kingdom. With standing removed, the function can be held under crown supervision until reviewed. Held Selka whispered. The basin accepted it. Held entered. Katrin did not look at her. A dangerous ability cannot be allowed to wander under a servant's personal grievance. Evander stepped closer to the basin. You planned to keep her nameless and use what she could read. Katrin lifted her chin. I planned to prevent chaos by drowning her, by separating function from standing. The hall went silent. Even the scent judges looked at the water now. Selka understood why. That phrase was too clean, too prepared. It had the weight of doctrine, not improvisation. Katrin had not invented it because Selka had surprised her. The law already had a place for women like Selka, a place below standing where their gifts could serve power without their names becoming inconvenient. Selka looked at Ruan. Is that what they did to you? The basin answered before anyone else could. Royal wolf function retained. Wolf name submerged. Alpha shadow usable. Judgment narrowed. Evander's face changed. Ruan had not only been drowned because he refused to erase names. He had been drowned so the crown could keep the shape of Alpha rule, while removing the part that objected. Katrin snapped. Royal wolf records are not equivalent to servant removals. Selka's voice was soft. No. They practiced on people first. The basin pulsed. Practiced entered. People entered. Katrin's mouth tightened. You will stop speaking. Selka looked up through wet strands of hair. Make me present enough to silence. The words landed harder than she expected. For one breath, no one in the hall moved. Evander looked at her as if she had placed a blade in his hand and refused to tell him whether to use it. Then he turned to Katrin. Restore her standing. Katrin's answer came at once. Impossible during active basin review. Then end the review. If the review ends before the function is contained, every submerged name attached to the witness line may attempt return. The court will lose control of the basin. The basin pulsed. Control entered again. This time the word blackened. Selka felt something beneath the water pull at her wrists, not from below but from the blank strip beside the basin. Her own name, washed thin, tried to move under the surface. Not restored. Struggling. She knew the next question was dangerous. She asked it anyway. Read what completes containment. Katrin's face went pale. The basin rose in a smooth black column between Selka and the Alpha King. Containment requires drowned standing. Function retained, name withheld. Witness voice compelled by crown. Evander's eyes darkened. Selka's throat closed. Compelled. That had been the right's true shape. Not punishment. Not even erasure. A legal drowning designed to remove Selka's name while keeping her witness function alive under crown control. The final line formed across the black water. The Moon Basin had not drowned Selka because she stole name water. It drowned her so the crown could use the last name water witness without ever having to hear Selka Nareth. The court finally understood why Selka Nareth had not been killed by the right. Death would have ended her usefulness. Drowning her name kept the function breathing under someone else's hand. The black column of basin water hung between Selka and Evander, holding the last line in the air like a blade made of law. The Moon Basin had not drowned Selka because she stole name water. It drowned her so the crown could use the last name water witness without ever having to hear Selka Nareth. No one spoke. Even Katrin Velm allowed the silence to stand for one breath too long. Selka felt the words press against her skin. Last name water witness. Function retained, name withheld. Witness voice compelled by crown. She had never felt powerful. She felt hollowed out. The court had not discovered she mattered. It had discovered how to use the part of her that mattered while leaving the woman herself below standing. Ruan stayed beside her. His wet muzzle remained against her bound hands, but his body had gone rigid, every black hair slicked to muscle, every breath low and controlled. The wolf knew this shape of law. He had lived it. His name had been submerged, while his shadow remained useful to Evander's rule. Katrin lifted her chin. The record confirms necessity. A dangerous witness function cannot remain attached to unstable servant standing. Evander turned toward her slowly. You call this necessity. I call it preservation. The basin pulsed. Preservation entered. Selka looked at the word as it sank. Preservation was what powerful people called cruelty when they wanted it to sound like medicine. Evander stepped toward the basin. Restore her. Katrin did not move. A royal command cannot restore what a royal command lawfully drowned. The words struck him. They should have. The final drop had fallen from his hand. Evander looked down at Selka. For a moment the court saw the Alpha King without the distance. He usually wore a man whose missing wolf had returned from water, whose judgment had been narrowed, and whose command had made an innocent woman useful by erasing her. Selka did not soften. If he expected pain to make her grateful for attention, he would be disappointed. She lowered her wrists into the water. Read what breaks containment. Katrin's silver name rod snapped against the basin rim. A contained witness cannot question containment. The water tightened around Selka's wrists until the white cord cut into her skin. The basin kept the sentence. Contained witness entered. Question containment entered. Then it read, Containment opened by final drop. Standing severed by Alpha command. Function retained under Crown supervision. Correction requires Alpha reversal. Evander's breath changed. Then I reverse it. The basin did not answer. Selka felt the silence before he did. Katrin smiled faintly. The basin does not accept regret as reversal. The words were meant to shame him. They also happened to be true. Evander looked at the black water. What does reversal require? Nothing happened. Again, the basin did not answer him here. This layer still moved through Selka's drowned, standing through the blank strip that had been her name, through Ruan's submerged record, anchored in her bound hands. Selka understood and hated the cost of it. She had to ask the law that had removed her how it wanted to be undone. Read what reversal requires. The basin answered. Final drop acknowledged. Drowned name must be spoken by command holder. Standing must be answered by name bearer. Witness function must not be separated from person. The court shifted. Person. That word did more damage than power. Katrin's face hardened. Improper language. The basin pulsed. Improper entered. Person retained. Selka stared at the line until her throat burned. Witness function must not be separated from person. For the first time, the basin had not called her servant trace residue function or drowned standing. It had named the crime beneath all of them. Separation. Katrin moved before anyone else could shape the moment. Majesty, do not speak her name. If you answer a drowned servant as a person under active basin review, every removal completed by your command may be challenged. Evander looked at her. Good. The word landed like a stone in the hall. Several nobles went pale. Katrin stepped closer. You will fracture crown law, no, Evander said. I will stop letting it speak through my missing wolf. Ruan's pale eye opened wider. Evander turned toward Selka. His voice lowered, not soft enough to be romance. Not gentle enough to be comfort. It carried too much guilt for that. Selka Nareth. The basin shook. The blank record strip snapped upward from the tray, dripping black water. The ink of her name did not return yet. Instead, the strip bent toward her mouth. Standing must be answered by name-bearer. Selka felt the whole court waiting. A command could begin reversal. It could not complete her. That was the first clean thing the basin had shown all night. She lifted her head. My name is Selka Nareth. The black water surged around her wrists. For one sharp breath, the room opened around her again. Not fully, not safely, but enough that the sound of her name struck the record hall walls and came back as something law could not pretend had never existed. The basin read. Name spoken. Name answered. Standing contest. Reopened. Katrin's eyes flashed. Reopened is not restored. Selka looked at her. Not yet. Ruan stepped forward then. Only one step. The water that fell from his fur moved toward the blank strip, carrying dark threads from every line read beneath him. Ruan Arel Vos, Mira Vos, Nareth Vale, Selka Nareth. The names did not rise as ghosts. They gathered as record, each one a submerged proof the basin had been made to hide. Katrin raised her name rod toward the witness circle. Seal the hall. Evander moved first. He did not burn the rod. He took it from her hand. The court saw that too. Not punishment yet. Interruption. The end of her ability to strike the basin while claiming procedure. High Namekeeper Katrin Velm, he said, you will not seal another witness while I still carry a judgment narrowed by your office. Katrin's calm cracked. Your judgment is what made this lawful. Evander's face went still. The basin accepted it. Alpha judgment used. Final drop used. Drowned, standing used. Namekeeper containment challenged. Then the black water rose higher, circling Selka Ruan and the basin in one dark ring. Standing contest reopened. Full restoration requires first illegal erasure named Selka's breath caught. The basin was not finished with Nareth Vale. It would not restore Selka cleanly until the law that created drowning below standing was named at its root. The final line formed in the air between Selka and Evander. To return Selka Nareth to law, the crown must first name the woman it erased to create namelessness. The woman who created namelessness did not rise as a ghost. Her name waited in the water. That made the hall more afraid. Ghosts could be prayed away. Names had to be answered. The black ring around Selka Ruan and the Moon Basin held steady beneath the open roof, reflecting no moonlight now. It reflected only the blank record strip trembling in front of Selka's bound hands. To return Selka Nareth to law, the crown must first name the woman it erased to create namelessness. Evander Frosthall stared at the line. No one moved. Katrin Velm stood without her name rod, one hand empty, the other still marked with black salt. She had lost the tool, not the doctrine. Her face had gone pale, but her voice remained clear. Majesty origin erasures cannot be reopened by emotional command. The basin pulsed. Emotional command entered. Origin erasure entered. Selka looked at the water. It does not want emotion. Her wrists ached where the white cord had tightened all night. Her knees were numb against the flooded stone. Her name had been spoken, answered, and contested, but not fully restored. She could feel the difference. The room remembered her now. The law still had not admitted it had harmed a person. It wants the root, she said. Katrin turned on her. You are not authorized to interpret basin requirement. Selka lifted her bound hands slightly. The blank strip lifted with them. No one in the hall missed that. Ruan stayed beside her, huge, and wet his muzzle still near her knuckles. He did not claim her. He did not save her. He kept the record from sinking while the living decided whether they would call drowning by its name. Evander looked at Selka. This time he did not look to be forgiven. Good. Forgiveness would have been another way of making her carry what he had done. He turned toward the basin and spoke with the full weight of the crown that had harmed her. Nareth Vale. The water rose. Not violently. Precisely. Nareth Vale. Living petitioner. First name water witness recorded. Origin standing retained. Crown erasure challenged. Katrin stepped forward. She threatened lawful removals. Evander did not look away from the water. She threatened unlawful silence. The basin accepted both. Lawful removals entered. Unlawful silence entered. Selka felt the black water loosen around her wrists by a breath. Not enough. The basin waited. Evander understood. His jaw tightened not with pride but with the pain of a man finally forced to speak without the shelter of titles. The crown of ash erased Nareth Vale while she was living, he said, because she could prove drowned names were not dead. The record hall changed. Not with sound, with weight. Several nobles lowered their eyes. One sent judge sat down hard on the wet stone. Katrin's mouth parted, then closed again, because denial had become more dangerous than silence. The basin read. Root erasure named. Living witness erased. Namelessness doctrine created. Below standing law corrupted. Selka's breath broke once. Below standing law corrupted. Not misunderstood. Not unstable. Corrupted. The word moved through the basin, through Ruan's drenched fur, through the blank strip where her name had been washed away. It moved through the court like a door opening in a sealed room. Katrin's voice sharpened. A corrupted doctrine does not restore every person touched by it. Procedure must decide scope. Evander finally turned to her. Procedure drowned them. Procedure held the kingdom together. No, Selka said. The court looked at her. She was still kneeling, still bound, still not fully restored. But the hall heard her now. You held the kingdom together by deciding which people law could stop hearing. The basin pulsed. Law could stop hearing entered. Katrin's calm cracked. Without standing, there is no order. Selka looked at the black water. Then standing cannot belong. Only to those the powerful are willing to remember. For the first time, the basin answered her without pulling pain from her wrists. Standing principle entered. Namebearer present. Function not separable from person. The white cord around Selka's wrists loosened. It did not fall yet. Evander saw. So did Katrin. The Alpha King took one step toward Selka, then stopped before he made the movement look like rescue. He had no right to place himself between her and the moment she had earned through drowning. He spoke to the basin, but his eyes remained on Selka. Selka Nareth is present under crown law. The blank strip shook. The basin waited again. Selka understood. A king could open the door. He could not walk through it for her. She lifted her chin. I am Selka Nareth, she said. Daughter of Mira Nareth. Servant of the record halls. Namebearer. Witness. Person. The white cord snapped. It fell into the black water and dissolved without smoke, without flame, without spectacle. The ink returned to the blank strip slowly, letter by letter, not as a gift from Evander, not as mercy from the court, but as correction. Selka Nareth. Legally present. Witness right restored. Shelter right restored. Burial name restored. Protection under moon law restored. The hall did not cheer. Selka was glad. Cheering would have made the court feel clean too quickly. Ruan lifted his muzzle from her hands. For the first time, the black wolf turned fully toward Evander. The Alpha King went still. The basin read one final royal line. Royal wolf name surfaced. Crown shadow returned. Alpha judgment widened. Ruan walked to Evander slowly, each step leaving black water on the stone. He did not crawl. He did not forgive. He stood before the king and pressed his wet forehead once against Evander's chest. Evander closed his eyes. Only once. When he opened them, he looked older. Better, maybe? Not absolved. He turned toward Katrin. High Namekeeper Katrin Velm, you are removed from custody of the Moon Basin pending witness review. Katrin's face hardened. By what authority? Evander looked at Selka, then at the basin, then back to Katrin. By widened judgment, he said, and by the first lawful witness this court has heard tonight. Selka rose slowly. Her legs almost failed her, but she stood before they could. Not because she was unbroken, because standing meant the right to be seen trembling and still remain present. The basin did not release every drowned name. Not yet. It formed only one new line across the water. All below-standing removals linked to Nareth Vale doctrine reopened for witness review. Katrin stared at the words as if they were fire. Selka looked at the basin, then at Evander. Review is not repair. No, he said, but it is the first record I will not let them bury. He did not ask her to trust him. That was the second wise thing he had done. Ruan stood between them, not as a bond, not as a claim, but as a returned shadow that would no longer allow silence to pass for law. The Moon Basin cleared at last. For the first time all night it reflected the moon. Selka looked down and saw her own face in the water. Wet, tired, named. Behind her reflection, thousands of faint marks waited below the surface. Not rising, not erased. Waiting to be heard by a woman the law had tried to drown and failed to keep underwater.